Here's what not to do if you find pieces of an Ouija board in your house. This guy found chopped up pieces of an Ouija board in his door frame in his house. Check it out. Clearly it was done because the previous house owner probably summoned something bad and did this to then ward off the spirit. But wait until you see what they did. They then tried to put it together. No. That is how you get cursed, you know? You're just re-putting the portal together for the demon to come and haunt you.
Story time. So it's 8 a.m. I'm getting my steps in. Figured I'd do a quick story time on the Ouija door. So we bought the house back in 2020. I'll insert some pictures here. Very pretty house. We were really excited. We moved in with our 2 kids. My fiance and I did experience some weird things in the house, like weird banging. I used to work from home, and occasionally my coworkers would say that they heard some weird things when I would get up and leave my desk. Never really thought too much of it, but eventually we did decide that we needed to move. So in January of 2022, my fiance was upstairs replacing the doors because we were getting ready to sell the home and we wanted to do some minor upgrades, like doors, toilets. So I'm sitting on the couch with my 5-year-old son watching television. Suddenly I hear my fiance at the time scream. So of course I'm like, maybe we have termites or something. So I pick up my camera and I go upstairs. And that's when I see the Ouija board in the door frame. And then I'm asking him, did you do that? Did you put that there? He's like, no. And I see the surprise in his face and I still don't believe him. So of course, yes, I went to go touch the Ouija board. I went to go touch the Ouija board to account for the pieces. We found 6 in total. So again, this is January 2022 when we found the Ouija board. We moved out of the house March 18th, 2022. I'm not sure if the new homeowners knew about any of this. I mean, we didn't tell them, of course, but TikTok might do its thing. Hopefully not. I hope they enjoy the house. We certainly didn't. We had a lot of issues. Like, for instance, one morning I woke up and there were hundreds of flies on the ceiling. I mean, hundreds of big bot flies. Then, of course, the rats. Oh, yeah, and getting back from Christmas break and our pipe burst in our floor. So, yeah, we were ready to move out of the house. Life now, I guess, is pretty good. A few days before we were going to move, my mom passed away. But we moved to Oregon and bought this beautiful house. Then my brother died last year. That really sucked, but we're still moving. Life is good. Yeah.
The only thing scarier than the Ouija board is how the Ouija board was made. After the Civil War, over 620,000 people died. That's a lot of people. All of these families wanted to communicate with their passed away loved ones, and they decided they needed to figure out a way to do that. So this woman named Helen Peters. Helen Peters created the Ouija board, and she was playing with the board when she asked it, "What does your name want to be?" where the Ouija board spelled out the word Ouija. So a few years later, a man comes around and tells Helen Peters that he's willing to buy the entire patent from her. She agrees, but she tells him to be careful. One day the man is on a 3-story building where he falls off and he grabs the windowsill with his fingers. The windowsill shuts down and breaks his fingers and he falls all the way to the bottom. He's still alive. The people go, they pick him up and they put him in the car and they're transporting him over to get to the nearest hospital. While the car is driving, they hit a bump in the road and one of his broken ribs pierced his heart. One of Helen Peters' last ever words before she passed away was to be careful of the Ouija board because it lies. Now Hasbro Games basically owns the entire thing and they sell it inside of kids stores. If this video blows up enough, I'll go buy a real Ouija board and we'll see if it's real. Like and follow.
You wanted proof Ouija boards are demonic? I have proof for you today. Bet you might not sleep tonight. I have said for years, when you play with Ouija boards, you are inviting things into your home straight out of hell. And today I have a picture of 2 things straight out of hell. This picture was submitted by one of my followers, and she was playing with a Ouija board one night. She was talking to ghosts or spirits, and this is what she captured. While playing with the Ouija board, she was asking the spirits, if there were any spirits around, to show themselves. And she took her camera and just started snapping random pictures. And most of them were just blurry and out of focus, but she did capture this one. And this one is something that might keep you up tonight, so I will warn you before you look at these. Just know that there's something very evil in this picture. This right here, this is what happens when you play with Ouija boards. You are summoning evil. I want you to look right below me. This is the face of the person playing with the Ouija board. And as I said, she took some random pictures all around. And most of them were just blurry, and she captured nothing. But I want you to look right here. Look at these. I'm going to circle them for you, but there are two faces right here behind her. That's the kind of stuff that will keep you up at night. That's the kind of stuff that you are inviting into your life and home when you play with these evil things. These things are straight out of hell. Let me know in the comments if you've ever played with a Ouija board, but let me recommend that you don't if you're thinking about it. If you have any paranormal story, evidence, or pictures you'd like to share, my email is listed in my bio. Thanks for watching. Have a great day. God bless.
Do not listen to this story, and I think this is the scariest one I've gotten so far for spooky scary story time. And honestly, I hate this story. When I read it, the hair on my arms was like standing on end, but I'm gonna share it anyway. Just watch it in the daytime, so save it for later if you need to, but literally don't watch it at night, because I did and it freaked me out. The story was submitted by this guy named Tom, who told me he wanted to tell me about his experience moving with his girlfriend during 2020. Tom is obviously not his real name. He wanted to be anonymous, but he will be reading the comments. So Tom and this girl, Michelle, are dating for like 3 years. They're living in a big city. I don't know which one he didn't say. They live a really good, comfortable life. Tom works in IT, and his girlfriend, Michelle, is an instructor at a yoga studio, and they both do pretty well. They're both really healthy, really fit. They love being social, going out. No mental health issues at all, right? Tom also said that Michelle made a lot of money on social media. She was sort of an influencer, and she did a lot with different fitness brands, and she would film a lot in her studio. 2020 hits, and Michelle is immediately laid off because the yoga studio closed, but Tom was able to work remotely because he was doing that mostly anyway. Their apartment is really expensive, and their lease is coming up, and they basically decide that they want a quieter life because they don't know how long everything that was going on in 2020 was going to last. So they ended up signing a lease for a place that was about 50 minutes outside the city in more of like a rural area. He said it was still kind of suburban, like there were stores around and places for them to go and get groceries, like not super country, definitely not what they were used to in the city. And when they moved out there, they were really excited because it was a change of scenery for them, and they were saving money to buy a house. So rent was a lot cheaper, and they were both happy with the move. Everything's fine. Tom sets up his office. Michelle has the spare bedroom as her yoga studio where she's going to continue filming content, and things seemed perfect. A couple months after they move, Michelle decides that she wants to get into gardening. She was obviously already really into health and fitness and wellness, but she decided she wanted to be more into sustainability and was starting to like make more videos about sustainability. So she has Tom go in the backyard and basically dig a giant pit where they're going to start a compost pile. And Michelle's out in the yard, and she's like planting some vegetables that she had gotten, and Tom calls her over because his shovel hits this like metal box. So she comes over to look, and they pull out this, he described it as maybe like a 12x6 just metal cash box. And it's all dirty and rusty, but they pull it up, and Michelle opens it, and inside is a Ouija board. And Tom is immediately kind of like put off by this. Like, he doesn't really believe in that stuff, but he also doesn't like it. And Michelle's like, oh my God, this is so cool. Like, I'm going to make some videos on this. And she takes it out and walks back up onto their patio with it and starts like dusting it off on their patio table. They kind of leave it out there, forget about it. And later that night, Michelle's like, oh, do you want to go play with the Ouija board? And Tom's like, not really. Like, you know, he said that they were really into Tiger King at the time. He just wanted to like watch that and hang out. And she was like more into going outside and playing with the Ouija board. So she's like, well, I'm just going to go play with it if you don't want to. And he's like, okay, whatever. And he just stayed inside and watched TV. The next day they wake up, Tom logs into his computer to start work, and Michelle, he said, was kind of just groggy, which was pretty out of character for her because she's normally pretty bouncy. She was a morning person. She would always wake up at like 6 a.m. with him, but she's just like slinking around the kitchen. And he's like, are you okay? And she's like, I just don't feel well. She's like, I don't think I'm going to make any content today. I think I actually have been like having the urge to paint. I'm going to go to the store and get some painting supplies. And he's like, okay, cool. He's working. She comes home with like a bunch of canvases and some paint. And she basically converts like half of her yoga studio into this painting area. And she spends the rest of the day doing that. The next day, same thing. She just wants to paint. She's not really feeling well, doesn't feel like making content, doesn't feel like doing yoga. This goes on for like a week, and one night he wakes up and she's not in bed. So he gets up to go to the bathroom, and then he notices like she's not in the house. So he sees the patio light is on, and he walks to the back door and he looks out and he sees her sitting at the patio table playing with the Ouija board. And he opens the door and he's like, Michelle, come inside. Like, what are you doing? And she's just like, oh, like I just wanted to see if I would get anything. And he gets this unsettled, anxious feeling in the pit of his stomach. because now he really does not like the Ouija board. The next day she's painting and he walks in the room and he's like, hey, like, I think we should talk about the Ouija board. I don't think you should have it. Like, I think you should get rid of it. I don't really like the idea of it in our house. And she's like, you're being dramatic. You know, I'm going through something. Like, it's a fun activity for me. I don't have a lot of fun in my life. My job was shut down. And so he just drops it. And he's like, okay, you're right. Like, I'm overreacting. So later he feels kind of bad and he goes back in her studio and she's still sitting there in silence painting. And he said on the canvas, it was just like a bunch of triangles that were all overlapping all over. And he basically tells her that he feels like they haven't really had a good like date night, obviously since 2020 started. He's like, why don't we have a fire in the backyard? We can just like grill some food. Like, it'll just be really fun. And she just tells him flat out no. Like, she just wants to paint. So he goes to bed and she is still painting that day. So he wakes up in the middle of the night again. She is still not in bed and he hears her talking. So he goes, okay, well, she's just making a video. So he peeks into her yoga studio and she's not making a video. She is still painting, but now she is painted off the canvases onto the walls and it's still the same overlapping triangles on every single surface around her. And he's like, Michelle, what are you doing? And she turns around and looks at him and says, I found the door. And at this point he realizes like she is not right. Like, she's having some kind of mental break. So the next day they wake up, same thing, she wants to paint, and he calls her mom and he basically tells her mom that Michelle is going through something and she needs to snap out of it, and he asks her mom if she'll come and stay with them. Her mom has like nothing going on, I guess, because the next day she comes and stays with them. And Michelle seems normal when her mom is there. Like, she basically pulls Tom aside and she's like, I don't know why you called me. Like, obviously I'm happy to spend time with you guys, but she seems normal to me. And Tom's like, she's not normal. Like, I'm telling you, she's not normal. That night, her mom comes and wakes Tom up because Michelle is back outside playing with the Ouija board again. And her mom is super religious, so she does not like the Ouija board idea at all. She's like, you guys need to get rid of it. Like, why did you get her this? And Tom's like, I didn't get her for it. We found it in the yard. The mom's like, oh my God, you found it in the yard? And she's like, we are getting rid of this right now. Like, we are going to burn it. And she makes Tom make her a fire where they burn the Ouija board. And Michelle just maintains like, you guys are overreacting. Like, this is just like a fun activity. Like, it's not even serious. Doesn't have any strong reaction to them burning the Ouija board aside from just like being annoyed. So it's the next night. Her mom is going to leave the next day and Tom wakes up in the middle of the night to her mom screaming, and he runs out in the hallway and he sees Michelle sitting in the dark facing the wall just at the end of the hallway, like facing away from them, sitting cross-legged staring at the wall. And her mom is yelling like, what are you doing? Like, get up. And Michelle does not react. Like, it's like she can't hear them. She's just repeating, they're going to come in, they're going to come in, they're going to come in. So Tom runs over, grabs her, picks her up, and like basically shakes her. She snaps out of it and she's like, what's going on? And they're like, you were literally just talking to the wall. So her mom has had enough. She decides that she's going to bring Michelle home with her. She's like, I need to take her to church. Like, I don't like this. And Tom can't really argue with her. He's sad to see Michelle go, but he thinks it's just temporary and he has to work. So he stays at the house when Michelle and her mom leave. I don't know where they lived, but he said it was like within a day's drive and he could go, and he visited her a few times and she seemed fine. Apparently at her parents' house, she kept doing weird stuff at night to the point where they had her committed. Everybody is attributing this to a psychological break from the stresses of COVID and her being laid off. Tom is beside himself, but trying to be as supportive as he can. He's in constant contact with her mom. And about 2 weeks after she gets checked into this mental facility, Tom is cleared to visit her. So he packs up, drives out to the mental hospital. She's sitting in this cool toned room in a rocking chair when he gets there, and he walks up to her and he was like, hey, how are you doing? And she just looks at him and says, you brought them with you. Oh my God, that freaked me out so bad when I read that. Oh my God. Keep sending me these stories. Tom said Michelle still is in this facility. She has obviously gained a lot of weight. She does not do yoga anymore. She does not make content. He said she has completely lost her mind and barely recognizes him when he goes to see her. A really good one that someone sent me, and I will be adding it to this.
Whatever you do, do not talk to ZoZo. I did this and messed up so bad. First of all, you guys shouldn't even be using Ouija boards. But I know some of you guys are not gonna listen to me, and talking to him is a no-no. Why does this aloe vera smell like french fries? Actually, you can't even say his name out loud 3 times or you will summon him. When I was 16, I accidentally summoned Nozo. Before I tell you what happened, let me tell you a little bit about who Bozo is. Toto is also known as the Ouija board demon. Of all the things to talk to on a Ouija board, he's not it. He is supposedly a fallen angel that was banished from the heavens by God. Some people even compare him to the actual devil. In the 1940s, a little boy named Roland Doe was possessed. It has become a widespread belief that Toto is the one that that possessed him. This little boy's story is what inspired the first exorcism movie. I'm Nikki, and if you're new to my channel, I'm a professional ghost hunter. One of the reasons you have to be so careful with Ouija boards and talking to toenails is because he can actually mimic voices of the dead. And a lot of times people using Ouija boards are wanting to talk to dead loved ones. He will prey on your insecurities and your fears, and overall he just sucks. He delights in scaring people, so whether that's telling you you're gonna pass soon or telling you there's 9 ghosts instead of 2 in the house. He even goes as far as to confuse psychics by telling them things like he's a little boy ghost and he's scared of the big bad ghost in the corner. There's a malevolent spirit in the house, but really there's only one, and it's him. He is a master deceiver, and we can go through the whole history of Bobo. Some people even think he's the only spirit that you actually talk to through a Ouija board, which I hope that is not the case because I've used a Ouija board a lot in my life. Go to part 2 and I'm going to tell you about what happened in my personal story with Momo.
There are some times when Ouija boards went wrong. A group of teens decided they wanted to play the Ouija board so they could, quote, put a camera down and see what happens. They made jokes about being possessed and were disrespectful the entire time playing, not taking the board seriously at all.
If anybody can hear us, move the thing, because move it.
They come back later after getting no results and decide to take it more seriously. Soon enough, the planchette begins to move on its own. After asking for its name, it moves to the letter 6. They get too scared to continue, and after thinking about it, they decide they need to finish what they started. They ask it what it wants, and it spells out the phrase, no peace, no goodbyes. Their friend Brandon then begins to act strange, moving the planchette across the board and grinning to himself. But what happened next will shock you.
Hey, that's
Still not funny after these.
hey.
According to them, Brandon became temporarily possessed and began lashing out at the group. Many people have pointed out that they never properly ended the game or followed its rules, so this could be the cause for Brandon's possession. They were able to get him under control, but he has been severely depressed ever since. Was this just a prank filmed by a few teens, or did they capture something truly evil on camera?
I hope it's not nighttime wherever you are, because this story is why I no longer touch Ouija boards. Mistakes were made. Quick disclaimer, this happened about 7 or 8 years ago when I was a dumb 17-year-old, so some of the details are a little bit fuzzy, but the important parts are floating around in there. It was a dark and stormy evening. Just kidding, it was like the middle of the day in the suburbs, and 2 of my friends asked me to come over to one of their homes because one of them had a Ouija board, but every time she used it, only one thing would come through. And that thing called itself Mama. So I was the weird, creepy friend of the group who was into tarot and supernatural ghosts and ghouls and all of that, so they invited me over so that I could try to use the board and maybe give them my input on what I thought was going on and who this Mama was. So knowing almost nothing but thinking I knew everything because I was 17, I went over to their house and we used the Ouija board. I will say, we followed all the rules and we took it very seriously. We never treated it like a joke, but I was less protected than I would like to be nowadays. So I began the session by stating we were ready and willing to communicate respectfully with any present spirits, and that if they wanted to make their presence known, they could move the planchette to yes. Almost immediately, the planchette, straight to yes. Now, if you've ever used boards before, you know that that's kind of unusual unless one of your friends is messing with you and moving it themselves. It normally takes a while to get going once you put that message out there, kind of like your matches on Tinder. But it shot straight to yes, so I followed up by asking, what is your name? And it spelled M-A-M-A, Mama. Immediately, I got this tingly feeling that was not great, and the air felt kind of heavy and staticky. I don't know if my friends were feeling it, but I was. But they kind of had looks on their faces like they were maybe feeling it, or they were just really creeped out. The way I describe the energy is like if you've ever been around when something really bad happened, like somebody broke a bone or got hit by a car, both of which have happened right in front of me. You know the feeling in the air is like charged electrically with a really icky feeling. It was exactly that feeling. So I started asking more questions. How old are you? How did you get here? Did you live here? Etc. And a lot of the answers I'm getting, I'm feeling kind of bullshit. I can't describe it. It was just a feeling I had. Another thing to note was that when it wasn't actively answering a question, the planchette was moving in figure eights. I then asked if any other spirits were present, and it said yes. I asked how many, and it said either 3 or 4. I don't remember the exact number, but I do remember that the answer was yes. So I said, Will you let any other spirits communicate? And it immediately jumped to no. I'm sensing whatever this is extremely controlling and overbearing, and it's been lying. At some point, I was feeling a little brave, and I decided to ask, how old are you really? It paused, and the planchette slowly moved to 0. I hope it's not nighttime. I asked, how old are you really? It paused, and the planchette slowly moved to 0. Even though I was a dumb 17-year-old, I knew that was not good. So it was time to abort mission, close session. Again, because I was stupid. I decided to continue engaging, and I said, will you let us speak to any of the other present entities? And it said, no. I said, okay, well, we're ready to close the session. Would you like to say goodbye? And it said, nope. So as if I was talking to some little kid, I said, well, if you're not gonna let us talk to anybody else, we're gonna have to say goodbye. And it just went, no, 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 no. So that's when I decided being kind and patient was not working anymore, and I needed to be stern and direct. So I stated, you have no power here. We are controlling the session, and we are ready to say goodbye. So my friend and I began to move the planchette to goodbye. And I don't know if she remembers this as vividly as I do, but I swear it felt like something was magnetically pulling against as we were pushing it towards goodbye. And I knew it was not her moving it because she looked just about as scared shitless as I was. Also, this was not the kind of friend to play pranks like that. So we had to push the planchette over the words goodbye, and we said goodbye. And the feeling kind of went. Once the staticky, icky feeling went away, I looked at my friends and I told them, this is really not good. Even though I was 17 and stupid, I knew enough to know that if something says it is 0 years old, that means it has never existed on this earth. And when it said it was 0, that was the only time I genuinely felt it was answering candidly. Also, it made me kind of want to throw up a little bit. I told my friend I thought that whatever it was really negative, potentially demonic, and that it had essentially tainted this board, that it was spoiled, that nothing else could come through because it had left a stain on this portal, essentially is what they are, and she could never use it without only that entity coming through. And I told her if she wasn't careful and she accidentally permitted it to manifest itself outside of the board, she was inviting it into her home. So my advice was to get rid of it, never use one again, and especially never ever ever take one inside of your home. And that was essentially it. She did what I told her. Years went by, I stopped thinking about it until one day I saw an article titled ZoZo the Ouija Demon, also known as Mama. Years old. That means it has never existed on this earth.
Okay, she's talking about ZoZo the Ouija board demon, and I have an eerily similar story to hers. When I was like 16, 17 years old and dumb, stupid like kids, my friends and I got into the Ouija board and we started playing with it. Well, eventually, this ZoZo came through. It kept going to Zo, Zo, Zo. I thought it was Zo or ZoZo or OZ. Anyways, it was a gnarly experience, and I will never touch a Ouija board ever again. You could tell right away that ZoZo was something different, that they were powerful because they would spell out like full sentences almost. They were very direct, very quick with their responses. And they also didn't allow any other spirits to come forward. Every single time we touched the Ouija board, it was ZoZo. It seemed very menacing, and the worst part was, it seemed to focus on me. Long story short, one day we were speaking to another spirit that came through, and right away I could feel it. I could feel that it was something much more powerful, and it was there for a purpose. Anyways, it essentially said that ZoZo was misleading us, and that they had never walked the earth in human form. It said that, and I knew it. I believed it with my entire soul. That I was like, this was a demon that we're talking to, and whatever this is a good being trying to warn us. And I took that Ouija board, I ripped it up, and I never touched the Ouija board again, and I had no plans on it. And then I went to college. I thought it was all behind me, and during college, I think freshman year, probably a year and a half later, my friends were like, let's play Ouija board, and I said, no, absolutely not. And I let them go do their thing. I didn't tell them why. I was just working on paper. 10 minutes later, I get a knock on the door saying, this Ouija board is asking for you by name. And I knew. I knew it was happening. And when I went to the room, I didn't touch the board. I just went in, and as soon as I walked through that door, it started going to ZO, 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 ZO. And not a single soul in that room had heard any of my stories. I yelled at them to stop, and they just thought it was funny. And then it spelled out, miss you. Nope, I Irish exited so fast and never turned around. Some more things, little creepy things happened that night. But then years later, just a few years ago, which is a long time after college, let's leave it at that, I was dating someone, and I told them about this situation, and they're like, well, how did you Google it? I'm like, no, I didn't Google everything back then. And she started Googling it to see if it was a real thing, and then she started seeing all the thousands of stories about the ZoZo. She thought I was fucking with her, but yeah, there's a ton of stories about ZoZo, and as soon as I started reading them, I sent them to my friends that I used to do this with, and they also had no idea that ZoZo's a thing.
Ouija board rules you should never break. Number 1, never use one in your home. When you use a Ouija board, you are essentially opening a spiritual door. When you open a door, you don't get to decide what comes through. So if you're doing this in your home, you just opened a door for something to be able to come into your home. Rule number 2, if your planchette starts counting down the numbers on the board, you need to immediately move it to goodbye and close out the board properly, because whatever you're contacting is attempting to come through the board, which means it's a relatively strong and most likely demonic spirit, and it is trying to come into your world. Number 3, challenging an entity to show itself or show proof of its existence. First of all, you don't know who you're talking to, and you just gave that thing an invitation. Second of all, anything strong enough to mess with your lights or move things around is typically a malevolent, aka demon, entity. Number 4, if your planchette starts making the figure 8, immediately go to goodbye and close the board out properly. You are 100% talking to a demon. And number 5, to add on to the figure 8 rule, a very famous demon that really loves to make the figure 8. His name is, I will not say it, but he typically will start making the figure 8 and start spelling out his many names. He likes aliases so that he can manipulate you. It can be ZOZO, ZAZA, and even abacus or mama. So if your board starts spelling any of these things, close it out quickly. Some people weren't able to, and this thing wreaked havoc in their life.